Hello and welcome to the third episode of Greatness Live. Today we're going to be talking about what it takes to get big ideas off the ground and make them happen. My name is John Gilbert from Eskimo Soup and Stuff of Greatness, and today I'm delighted and excited to be joined by serial entrepreneur, a man who has been the founder and then has gone on to sell companies including the Gadget Shop and Red 5, and is currently very occupied with a new health tech startup which we're going to be hearing about later on in the programme. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Jonathon Elvidge.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Jonathon.
Welcome.
So, in the beginning, there was Gadget Shop.
Yeah.
And for anybody watching this who doesn't know your story, and I suppose about Gadget Shop, I guess could you tell us a little bit about how and I suppose why you started the company?
Yeah. So, like many ideas and I guess businesses, the Gadget Shop was born out of frustration. So I would struggle to know where to go to buy gifts for people, and I used to think, why doesn't somebody open a shop where you can find cool stuff and affordable stuff to buy as gifts for people? That was really it. It was.
But we get frustrated about things all the time. We don't necessarily then jump into starting a business as well. So
yeah, that's true.
So there's an opportunity there, but then you've made a personal decision to leave the comfort of the corporate life.
Yeah.
What's comfortable, I don't know, but to do something quite bold.
Yeah, I think the difference was I was working for KC at the time, and I was in sales, and I wanted to be good at sales because I was paid by commission. So I read a lot of books on successful selling and exhausted those, and then started reading books, sort of next one along in Waterstones. This is before you read everything online. And it was about successful people in general. So I started reading those books and started to become, I suppose, inspired on the realization that a lot of really exciting businesses were started by ordinary people. My perception was that you needed maybe an extraordinary talent or wealth behind you or a different mentality, but reading these books made it clear that ordinary people were achieving extraordinary things. So that was a source of inspiration. So the idea, which was why doesn't somebody open a shop selling cool stuff I can afford to buy and give as gifts, became more of a why don't I open a cool store selling great, cool gifts. And so I started to ask myself those questions, and began to get excited by the prospect of opening a shop. And then that was the starting point of following that journey, which resulted in the Gadget Shop opening in 1991 when Prince's Quay opened in Hull, 15th of March to be exact.
Very exact.
A date burned into my psyche.
You say that about a date born into your psyche. Did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into?
No, not at all. I think had I realised more about what was required, particularly around what the financial commitments would have been, I would have realised early on that it was an impossibility, I think, and I would have stopped. So being naive, not knowing what was involved, was a real strength to getting the thing open. And it was just a case of getting the ball rolling, which involved picking up a phone and ringing the letting agent for the key that was under construction at the time, and saying I'd like to open a shop here, and that really made it real. Up until then it was just a thought, and so they said, oh, that sounds interesting, send us your an idea of what you want to do, if we'd like to see some other shops that you might have, and so on and so forth, and so I then had something to do, and the idea started to become a reality, and then it was basically one step at a time from there.
Okay. And I suppose there would have been those moments where it was like, am I doing the right thing? But it sounds a little bit like, although you talk about naivety, you were actually pushed into doing these things by other people. There's a point where you got this boulder and it's started to roll, and then it has to succeed because you've gone that far with it.
Yeah. There is that. I mean, it is that taking decisive action, which you see on posters about starting businesses. It's a key thing because loads of people have ideas, and probably some great ideas that they just never pursue. And you don't want to look back and think, oh God, I wish I'd done that, or I was going to do that. So that initial taking some decisive action to get it going is important, and then it's a case of wanting to or being in a position where you think I've come to the end of the road lots of times, and the only thing that kept me going, apart from this blind vision and this picture I had in my head of the store, was starting to make commitments. Right. So the biggest one really was committing to a 25-year lease, which was the norm in those days. It's not now. So I signed up to pay.
Well, a quick bit of maths from me. That lease is only fairly recently expired.
Yeah, exactly. It was a 25-year lease, and it was committing to paying, I think it was $35,000 a year for the next 25 years. And that is in 91, so it was a big number in those days. In fact, it was more than my mortgage was. So my mortgage was around about that, but I had 25 years to pay it. And here I was committing to the same number every year for the next 25 years. Once you sign that lease, you effectively legally committed to it. So when I did want to turn back, because I got things wrong, running out of money, couldn't get everything together, that was the sort of thing that held me back, and also getting bank loans and remortgaging the house, and then getting other funding around leasing shop fittings, I think, at the time, which didn't really work out. And they're all commitments that keep you going when common sense steps in and says you must be mad, which several times.
But it's really interesting to hear you bring that up, and it's something that I've spoken to other people about, is this idea that anybody can have an idea, anybody can be frustrated, have a business idea, and I understand it's a big difference between the ones that go off and do it and the ones that don't. But even if you're running a business, lots of people I know have already done that. They're running a business, they have another idea, but they don't have to do it. So therefore it becomes something that they talk about, and it never really materialises because there's certain risks and certain time demands attached to that. But the moment that you've got your neck on the block, as you will have done with these kind of investments and these loans, there's no other option but to succeed. So I mean, is that how you saw it? And I've known you for a while, and I've heard you speak, and I've read about you as well. We haven't got time to do it justice now, the full kind of story on that, but I know that the going got tough at times as well. And was it just that kind of clarity of purpose? And
I was driven by the need to succeed, because the alternative was to go bankrupt. So certainly to get the thing open and going. And that took about 2 years, and that was probably the hardest part, getting the thing off the ground. Once it was up and running, there were other challenges that presented themselves along the way to keep it going and get it to grow. And eventually it became, when I was running it, 50 stores across the UK, and we became the biggest, probably the most well-known brand in our sector, being the sort of innovative gift sector, I suppose you would say. And we won awards. We were one of the fastest private growing companies in Britain, twice officially, 3 times if you count the one they missed. And we won Rising Star of Retail in about 2000, something like that. So we people see those successes along the way, but there's a huge amount of challenges to get you there. So it's not an easy ride, but like anybody who runs their own business, it's like a different life. It's everything is sort of more vivid, brighter. You're having worked for
the ups and the downs.
The excitement and the successes and the failures. So you've got to be able to cope with those, and it makes for a really exciting ride. But you've got to accept that there's going to be downs and knockbacks along the way, and you've got to get up from each one. So you've never failed until you don't get back on the horse, as it were. But there's lots of opportunities to fail. You've just got to find ways through it, and you tend to do that once you're driven. Once you accept that there's going to be knockbacks, and it's a normal part of running a business, then you tend to look at them with a little bit more clarity and look for ways around them rather than just reeling from them each time.
Okay, that's good advice for us all to take on. So you did that, and I'm about to do your career a big injustice, because you then did it again with Red 5, which we haven't sadly got time to kind of talk through that as well. So there's lots of exciting things that happened in the years between, and Jonathon sold the business again. But I want to make sure we've got plenty of time to talk about kind of the present and the future, really. So you're involved now in a new health tech startup, Moodbeam.
Yeah.
Can you tell us? So you've having grown and sold these businesses, I guess you've had lots of opportunities to do anything you wanted, really. Why have you chosen Moodbeam, and can you tell us a bit more about what it's all about?
Yeah, so Moodbeam is another one born out of frustration.
Right.
Except it wasn't.
That's an immersion.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't my frustration. Christina, who's my business partner at Moodbeam, it was her frustration that created the idea that eventually became Moodbeam. So she wanted to find a way to connect with her daughter's emotional well-being when she wasn't with her. Okay. So anybody with young children know they go off to school, and you ask them at the end of the day how they're getting on, and they don't either remember it or don't choose to talk about it. So they'll generally say good or not good, but they don't ordinarily elaborate on it. And she wanted to understand more about her child's feelings at school, so she was looking for something that would do that, expecting to find it. And did a lot of research. She's a journalist by profession, so she's good at that. And couldn't find anything. I felt that if she had that need to find an emotional connection with somebody you can't be with every day, then other people maybe would too. And we know each other because we live in the same village and we're friends. And so she knocked on the door, knowing that I had built up businesses and had contacts and was trying to get some time off probably, and said, look, I'm trying to find this, I can't find it, you know, I'd like to think about creating it. What, you know, am I mad? What should I do next? Can you give me some advice? So I have quite a few conversations with people who want advice around business, knowing that you've built and sold businesses. So I did what I try and do and signposted to some people I know and create some connections. And my advice was, you've got to do it. You know, if you feel there's a need there and it's a frustration and it doesn't exist, then that's the sort of thing you should be doing. So she went off and came back, having spoken to a few people, and said, you really like this idea, do you want to do it with me? So that was the start of it, really, and we started a company called Moodbeam, and we've created a device which we're trialling at the moment, which is very simple, and the simplicity is its strength, really. And you would carry this device, which is about the size of the keyring, and you press a happy button or a sad button to denote how you're feeling at the time. And it kind of evolved, because originally we were looking at more emotions, and we were looking at primarily children, the original sort of use case, and our original idea, and we developed concepts around a wearable with 5 emotions on it, sort of happy, sad, excited, nervous, angry, and the idea was the child would press it to denote how they were feeling, and that would log it against time, and then you could look back on your child's emotions and say, I can see you're not happy here or there, and start to get the conversation going. And we had some focus groups, particularly mums, who were very vocal about what they feel about when you're talking about doing things with, you know, with children and so on. And they said, we like the general idea of capturing a mood, but we don't think they can instinctively select from 5 emotions. And it's particularly at a young age. And by the way, if it's a wearable, it might draw attention to them and actually lead to some of the things we're trying to pick up on. So we went back to the drawing board and started again, and we redeveloped it to this 2 emotion device. So you've got happy, sad, or good, bad, or positive, negative, however you want to label it. Yep. And we made it pocketable, so it could be wearable if people felt they wanted to wear it. And the designs have evolved to be something quite small that could be worn on a wristband, or could be in the pocket, and can be operated discreetly. So it kind of changed to that, and then once we'd got to that stage, and the conversations we were having with people started to expand, it suddenly opened doors to a whole new raft of use cases based around its simplicity. So people would say, well, I've got an elderly relative in a care home, what if I gave them one and they could press it to denote when they were feeling happy, sad, and then when I go and see them, I can download the data, which is via Bluetooth, to an app, and you say what's going on at 3 o'clock in the morning every Tuesday. And this is something that I picked up on a television programme about a care home that were giving bed baths to the residents at 3 in the morning. So you'd say, you shouldn't even be up at 3, what's happening? And they say, well, I'm getting a bed bath at 3, and you'd be going, well, that's totally wrong. So you get the conversation going, or you can identify what makes them happy and speak to the care home and do more of that, or maybe they're vulnerable in their own home and you want to see when they're feeling good and not feeling good. So that was a use case. And then people say, well, look, what about somebody I know suffers from issues around mental health, particularly depression, where they're encouraged to keep a mood log in a diary, and they don't because they don't want to write about how they feel when they're feeling down.
Well, yeah, and I guess if you're in an environment of other people and they're aware of that as well, it's just like, if I got my book out and it's just like, what have I said to upset John? I mean, whether you have or not, so that's another simplistic way of mental health, I realise. But I mean, yeah, I guess.
No, I mean,
something that's a bit more discreet, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the data's accurate because it's how you feel. You record it at the time, so you timestamp in mood. And then you can look at that in the context of, it might be diet, exercise, medication, hormones. And for the first time, it's how we describe ourselves, you can see how you feel. And very few people take time to stop and reflect on how they are actually feeling. So it kind of forces you to do that, and then you can look back on the data and you look for changes and patterns, see if your mood is improving week by week or day by day or month by month, or if it's not, or when there are triggers around patterns of behaviour. So its simplicity is its strength. Can people sort of understand it quickly? And they to be able to see how you feel and to look at the moods and to look at linking that to other events in your life is really powerful, particularly around depression, anxiety and stress and other situations around care. Autism, for example, is another trial group where they express themselves differently in a non-verbal way generally, or find it difficult to express themselves in the normal way. And we've got a whole raft of use cases, and it's now moved into elite sport, where we've got some Olympic athletes trialling it, and some head of some national governing bodies, and the chief exec of British Athletics is trialling it with a group, because there's this link between well-being and performance, and it kind of makes sense. If you're not feeling good, you're not necessarily going to be performing at your best. But there's also this criticism in elite sport about duty of care with athletes, you know, when they're built up to be something and then maybe dropped, particularly in football academies and so on. So the duty of care is an important thing to look at. How are they feeling? But also it links to well-being, to performance, which is a practical thing for them to be driving. So they look at, you know, obviously the fitness regime and the training and the diet and the sleep and all of that, but very little emphasis being put on well-being.
Yeah, and how you would measure that practically without a device.
Yeah, and the device is key, because there are apps around measuring mood, but young children in school can't use those. Elderly without the cognitive skills can't use that. We've also tested it in the workplace, and you don't want to encourage the workforce to get the phones out more often than not. How to use it if you are on the hockey pitch, for example, carrying your phone around, and you can't use it while you're driving if it's an app, or in a meeting. So the fact that it's an input device that you carry with you, that's instinctive and small and discreet and can be used at any time and can quickly timestamp the mood, is really important, and that sets us apart from anything else out there. So you log your mood, and then you download it and look at it on an app when you're ready. So it takes away that constant screen engagement that can be quite troublesome in the normal day-to-day life. So it's quite exciting. I mean, the workplace is interesting because there's some emphasis now being put on well-being in the workplace. There's sort of a new conversation going on about mental health in the workplace, and that, you know, mental health is like physical health. It can be good in anybody, or it can be failing in anybody in any sense, and it should be treated the same, whereas mental health has in the past been not talked about. You quite happily tell the world if you twisted your ankle and you know that's the reason why you're limping, but if you're feeling down, you're not going to tell the world that I'm just feeling really low all the time. Up until now, when people are now starting to open up about the mental health. So if we can find a way of looking for triggers, that's what people want to understand, what makes them feel how they feel, and having an accurate log of their mood that they can link to other things going on in their life is a really good point to start the conversation, either with yourself or with a counsellor or a medical professional. You could share your data and really start to get, for the first time, an indication of why you're feeling like why you're feeling the way you feel. So it's really quite exciting, and its simplicity is its key, but it's actually relatively complex when you now start.
Well, the scope is enormous. As you say, you began with this remit around a frustration in a particular issue, and then conversations become conversations, and obviously, is it almost a case of, and by all means come back on this very moment going out loud, but it's almost a case that there might be too many possibilities.
Well, there are a huge amount, and that's part of the challenge, but it also shows we're on the right path.
Yes.
So the challenge is, where do you focus? And so we've got 150 prototypes made that were designed in Hull and made in the UK, and the cases were printed here at C4DI. So it's very much a minimum viable product, but it allows us to get out there and test the concept. So people are carrying the devices, using them, seeing the data, and then we're getting fed back. So we are trying to look at where we should focus, and we think there's an important area around wellbeing in the workplace. We think care is key, so mental health particularly, and we also, there's a huge amount of interest in sport. So those are areas we are sort of focusing on. We're trying to hone it down. It's actually getting broader. The more people we speak to, the more people that come back to us say, have you thought about it here or there? And ultimately, it could be a tool for everyone. It's sort of a tool for life, you know, where you have it. We've got a group testing it around postnatal depression. So it could be when a child is born, you could be using it to test yourself. When they get to school, they could be using it to feedback on their own moods, all the way through life, up until, you know, end of life, effectively.
Well, I mean, that's it. It's just, globally, we have this obsession with economics and wealth, and every now and again, people kind of come up with this movement towards happiness, and really, that's what we're in it for.
Yeah.
That's a whole other debate and a whole other show as well. But this is, it's interesting, John. How is this a business, or is this something that's is it a social mission almost?
Yeah, I mean, strangely, given my past, we haven't put a business plan around this.
Wow.
We are driving this forward. We're self-funded at the moment. We're going to need to look for funding to put it into production, but we are driving this because we see the demand. We see when we sit in a meeting with somebody and they ask what we're up to, and a lot of our meetings end in tears because we're talking to people who suddenly imagine it in use with a friend or a relative, and they can say, this is, you know, we've spoken to lots and lots of people now, and generally it's, gosh, this will be really good for this person. It might be themselves, it might be a relative, it might be a friend, and they say they're struggling so much at the moment, and they would really benefit from this sort of basic technology so they can start to see how they feel. Particularly people around depression. We've talked to people who have suffered from depression and in some cases been suicidal, and they need to feel that somebody is there to talk to, somebody is looking at what they're doing. You know, if you get referred to mental health services because your GP said, we think it's depression, you need to speak to a professional. If you then get told, yes, come in 14 weeks, you know, that's a real negative and can actually contribute to the problem. If you're given a device and say, start using this, start logging your moods, then we've got something to work with when you do come in. It's a whole different picture. So those sort of conversations we have where you can see it potentially being life-changing for people is what's driving us forward at the moment. And we want to get this into production, and we want to get people using it, and we think it has the potential to change lives. And that in itself is a different mission, effectively. We need to build a business model around it because it has to be funded. We're going to have an ecosystem based around applications and web services and cloud-based services and data management, and that needs to be funded. But we want to find a business model.
But you don't know exactly what that looks like now, so long as you say we're making this difference, people are interested, therefore there's enough substance to this. It will happen.
It's a gut feel. We've got a gut feeling that people want it, and they're going to make use of it and get something from it enough to pay for it in some way. And it's an odd thing to be, because my background in growing businesses is always get a business plan together, even if it's a one-pager. Understand the revenue model, understand the profitability. What are your costs? What, you know, and it's a not like that. And the only thing that keeps me sane is knowing that Google never had a business model, Facebook never had a business model, YouTube never had a business model, and they got traction and they got demand and they found the business model that works and they are now
they're doing it right,
hugely successful. And so it's built on a kind of, you know, solving a problem with a social remit, the ability to change lives and make a difference, and hopefully be able to fund it so it can be something that anybody can afford and make use of. So it's exciting for all those reasons, really.
Okay. And for anybody watching, where can they find out a bit more about Moodbeam?
Just Google Moodbeam. Hopefully you'll find us. Autocorrect will probably try and change it to Moonbeam, so you'll probably be looking at Moonbeam for a while, and then just change it back to Moodbeam, and you'll find us. And you know, we're at the point now where we're looking at putting it into production. So we're costing in the hardware and the various platforms that we need, and we can't wait to get to the point where we have something we can try en masse. The trials have been really interesting because they've sort of backed what we've said, and we've got a huge amount of feedback on how it should look and how it should work, and people are loving seeing for the first time this sort of new bit of information that's always in their head but never comes out of it, where they can sort of take a moment and look at it. So we definitely feel we have got something in the pipeline here.
I'm sure at the very least it's something in the pipeline. So it's great. So if you want to know more about Moodbeam, just Google it, and you'll find it there as well. So we covered quite a lot today, and we're going to wrap up at the moment. Jonathan, thank you ever so much again.
You're welcome.
I do appreciate
it.
Thank you as always for your continued help, and we'll be back again with another episode of Greatness Live in the not too distant future.